Welcome to Wrong Time Watch. My name is Kevin, and today we're looking at the 9-4 watch's Successor, Gen 1 in my left hand and Gen 2 in my right hand. So Gen 1 has the Seiko NH35 movement, and Gen 2 has the Miyota 9015 or 9039 movement, depending on if you get it with date or no date. The first generation does actually have a ghost date position, so the dial is not cut out for a date, but the movement does have a date. So when you pull the crown out to the first position, it's not to set the time, it's to set the date, which is not present. And then you pull all the way out to set the date, or set the time. Okay, so they both have flat crystals with flat sapphire crystals with AR coating applied to them. Nice and flat, very legible. And they're both rated to 100 meter water resistance. They both do have applied logos and applied indices. Gen 1 has C3 Lume and Gen 2 has Super Luminova. This is a prototype watch, so the Lume may be better on the production model. Just keep that in mind when we look at the Lume at the end of the video here. Let's take a close look at both of these dials before we go any further with this presentation. So they both do have textured dials. This just has vertical stripes here, and the other one has a much improved textured dial. Also, this has numbers for the minute track, and the second gen does not. I like the way that the second gen looks better with the dial, the indices, and the hands. I also like, well, they both do not have date, but I like that this has an actual no date movement. And you can see automatic down there at 6 o'clock position. I really like the dial on this one. It's very neat to look at. It has a three-dimensional effect. Almost looks like a wormhole or something, kind of just drawing you in there towards the center. And the new logo looks nicer too. I'm not sure what that is exactly, but I can see there's a number 9 on there. And the previous logo reminds me of either a police department or a fire department logo. And that logo is present on the case back as well. It's an engraved case back. I have worn this watch, not very much, obviously. I just put all the links back in because I was, actually I do have this listed for sale. If you're interested in buying it, send me an email. Case on this one is not quite as refined. It just has a sharp edge on the corner here versus the chamfered edge on the second generation. All right, let's zoom back out here. So this one has the butterfly clasp. It does look a little more dressy, but as far as getting a good fit on wrist, I don't like butterfly clasp. Either end up, well, for me, I ended up sizing them too loose. I can't really stand a watch that is too tight. And this one here, you can use one of the 3 micro adjusts to get a better fit. They both do play with the light very nicely. And they both do use split pins. They're not screw pins. Split pins are fine. They're easy enough to size and to keep the cost down, but I do prefer screw pins. Either of them are better than pin and collar, though. I guess pin and collar is not too bad. I just always afraid of losing that little collar. In sizing, it does take a little more effort. But I do like the bracelet on this one a little better. This H link and then the nice taper looks a little more dressy. It looks a little better to me than the standard 3 link here. They both do have chamfered edges on the outside of the bracelet and then also on the inside of these links. I also really like the taper on this one. They are essentially the same size on this portion of the bracelet, but this one's much wider at the top. Really like how this bracelet integrates into the case. It just continues this case shape down through the bracelet. That fixed center link, not really a center link, but that extends the lug to lug, and it wears a little bit larger on my wrist than this other one does here. So I measure the crystals on both of these, and I think they're the same size. It's not really the easiest thing to measure with the calipers. I think I measured about 32.2 or 32.4 for both of these crystals. But Gen 1 looks like a smaller dial. In reality, it's not. It's due to this large, thick bezel. The bezels, I didn't measure the bezels, but I would say they're probably the same size. Actually, this bezel may be a little bit smaller because you can see more of the case edge there. But the slope of this bezel makes it look a lot smaller too. This one here, I don't care as much for how the bracelet integrates into the case. I know why they did it, is so you can take this bracelet off. You can put another bracelet on if you want. This is a very nice bracelet. I don't think I would change it, but you can put it on some straps, and I will do that in an upcoming video here. You see how it looks. I think it'll look pretty good because you're not going to see the top of that strap. It should hide under this case here. It's not quick release end links, but I should be able to get them off easy enough. It would be nice if I had drilled lugs. And then of course you can see the Miyota 9015 movement there through the display case back. I really like looking at watch movements. They don't need to be really decorated for me to appreciate them, but this does have some decoration to it. Custom rotor too has a 9.4 logo on there. So very nice. I like looking at that more than an engraved case back. And I think I already mentioned they both have push-pull crowns. Both have signed crowns also. The old logo, and then that's also present on the bracelet clasp. I would like the just to have the dual pushers without the safety clasp. You really don't need the safety clasp on this type of watch. It's not a dive watch, and I don't think you really have to worry about it falling off your wrist. Looks a little more refined than this type of clasp. But it is a milled clasp here. The center portion is milled, and then these two portions are stamped. Again, with 3 micro adjusts. If you have not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. It helps me out a lot. And again, appreciate 9.4 Watches for sending over this prototype for us to check out. And I have, well, I own this watch. I've had it for, I think, about 2 years now, actually. All right, let's talk about the dimensions, and then we'll get these on wrist, and then check out the loom. So I did measure the center link to center link measurement, 50.3 millimeter. Then I measured the actual case here, lug to lug. I would consider that lug to lug, 46 millimeter. Case diameter, 40.0. The thickness is actually quite thin considering it's a Seiko NH35 movement in here. And I measured this at 10.9 millimeter thick. And this dimension here, I don't know if it really means anything, but 25 millimeter for this top of the bracelet, and that tapers down nicely to 17.8 millimeter. Crown size on this is 5.4 millimeter, which is a little small, so I'm happy that the Generation 2 has a larger crown. It's kind of a little interesting. I'm not used to seeing a mid case just come straight across and then just kind of angle down on the ends. And this is mostly brushed. You do see some polishing on the edge of the bezel there, and it has been carried over to the second generation, and also the side of the case back is polished also. So you can see kind of the some of the same design language on the second generation. So again, the edge of the bezel is polished, and then the case back is polished there. And this hides the thickness a little more. This is 10.4 millimeter thick, so only a half mil thinner than the previous generation, but it looks even thinner than that. Some kind of magic going on here. Alright, so lug to lug, as there is no center link, lug to lug is 44.6, so that's about 1.5 millimeters smaller than the previous. Diameter is the same, exactly the same at 40.0 millimeter. Again, 10.4 millimeter thick. Lug width is 20 millimeter, and this does taper down to 18. Not as much taper as the previous, but again, the width of the bracelet is the same, essentially the same down here, 18 millimeter versus 17.8 on the other one. And the crown does look a little large on this watch, so I think they made a good move in decreasing the size of that for the production model. He just told me it'd be a little bit smaller. He didn't give me an exact dimension. So this measures in at 6.4, a full 2 millimeter larger than the previous. And again, signed crown. Signed push-pull crown. I actually prefer a push-pull crown for a non-diver watch, just easier to use. Alright, let's get both of these on wrist. This one here I can just slide on. Again, I have a 6.5 inch wrist with a 52 millimeter wristband, and this measured in at 50.3. We'll check out the loom just after this. All right, let's zoom out here. Yeah, I would say it kind of looks a little bit big on my wrist, but maybe not. It is all dial, so it makes it look a little larger than say a 40 millimeter or 42 millimeter dive watch. I'll compare this one here to my SKX in a moment here. If I can find it. Yep, here it is over there. So I don't know if that how that looks to you with the way the bracelet's integrated into the case. Kind of looks like the watch head is floating on top of a bracelet here. Nice and thin though, wears very well. And here it is a little bit closer. All right, let's get the SKX in here. We'll hold it side by side with each of these, and I will include this in the loom portion of the video just to give you a point of reference. So yeah, 42 millimeter case diameter on the SKX, but it doesn't look that much larger than the Successor. And the bracelet almost disappears under the case when holding it like this. And here we are with the first generation. Yeah, like the video and leave a comment below. And come right back with the loom. Okay, on the left we have the Seiko SKX009 with Seiko Lumabrite. In the middle, 9/4 watches Successor Gen 1 C3 loom. And on the right, Gen 2 with Swiss Super Luminova. And again, the watch on the far right is a prototype. Perhaps the loom will be better for the full production model. But right now, I would say the I would say Seiko and the Gen 1 are very close with the lume brightness. So maybe the lume, well, I guess you can't say the lume is too good, but maybe the lume is a little bit too good for the Gen 1 than what it needs to be, but here it is, a lume comparison. All right, that will conclude this video. As always, thank you for taking the time, and thank you for watching.